So you finally got that call you've been waiting for. Your application has been accepted and your job interview is scheduled for 2 weeks from now. But suddenly reality kicks in. You are not ready for this. What if they say no? You need this job. So much is riding on you nailing this interview. Your palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. Sorry, got a little carried away there. Anyway, I have been in your shoes before. I've been told that I didn't have enough experience and that my qualifications were lacking. That's a crappy feeling to say the least, but it doesn't have to be this way. You know, as someone who couldn't land jobs based on my academic achievements or my extensive background, I had to rely on alternate tactics to win over the hiring board during an interview. I am genuinely excited to share these 5 tips with you today. I have used each and every one of these to help me to either land jobs I was wanting or to leave a lasting impression that led to future opportunities down the road. Let's get into it. Actually, before we get into the tips, I want to touch briefly on why they are so effective, even though they are incredibly simplistic. The idea that I could find a way to impress my way into a job without the proper qualifications was first brought to my attention in Napoleon Hill's best-selling book, Think and Grow Rich. In it, he tells the story of how Edwin C. Barnes entered a partnership with the great Thomas Edison, and with no proper relationship or experience, Mr. Barnes was initially rejected to go into partnership with Mr. Edison. Now, he was, however, hired to do menial chores around the Edison office, but eventually he proved himself to be a valuable contributor and eventually obtained his dream job to go into partnership with Mr. Edison. Now, his initial impression alone was enough to convince Thomas Edison that he should, at a minimum, hire Mr. Barnes and keep him close by. A good first impression can offset the lack of credentials. What else can we do to tip the scales in our favor? Let's get into that now. Also, stick around to the end for a bonus tip. Tip number 1, research the job and the company. So, in my opinion, the interview process starts long before you walk through those doors. You have to do your due diligence to research the job that you're applying for to include the company. Now, here's a bonus tip. If you can come into the interview knowing what the job entails, how that job fits into the big picture of the company, and can demonstrate knowledge of how this job interconnects with the overall big picture of the company, well, you'll just position yourself to stand out that much more. Now, keep in mind, most interviewers only look at the applicants at a surface level. They want to choose someone who they feel like they can get along with, knows the job, and is teachable. But it's very rare for them to come into contact with someone who is making a statement such as the following: I'm excited to take on this job as a computer-aided design technician. I believe that I can provide drawings that can meet or exceed your company standards, which will ultimately save time, money, and free up resources within the company while also keeping existing clients happy. This will help to improve the reputation of the company, which, through word of mouth, will ultimately bring in new clients. Now let's use another example. So when I applied for my job as the training officer for my unit, I said something along the lines of, "Sir, I feel like I'm the best fit for this job because I have an intimate understanding of the organization and how it fits into the brigade's overall mission statement. Furthermore, this unit has a history of acting alone without input from higher headquarters. I'd like to be the one to break down those barriers and build a better working relationship with our brigade so we can better synchronize our efforts and not have to fight each other every step of the way." You see how this works? You take this opportunity to dive deeper into your research so that you can better represent your understanding of the job. All of this can be attained through just some prior research. To this day, it blows my mind how many people put in for jobs, sit across from me in the interview, and they don't even know what the job is about. They may have some vague idea about what it is, but they can't really tell me what the job is or why they even feel like they're qualified. So what I'm gonna sound next might sound crazy, but since I am kind of crazy, I'm just gonna share it with you since, we're friends and all. Ready? Just Google it. Google that. Just take the tiniest amount of time and do a little research ahead of time. Google the job, YouTube the job, or you could use a little used tool that you might have access to, but maybe you just never even thought about it. See, if the option is available to you, then you should maybe talk to someone who already has or has done the job that you are applying for. It's utterly insane to me how many people don't take advantage of that. If there is someone you know and they are willing to communicate with you, just take the opportunity to pick their brain about the job that you want. All of this is critical research, which aids in preparation. Nothing looks more unprofessional than showing up to the job interview without any knowledge whatsoever about the job you're interviewing for. This is literally their first impression of you, and the fact that you don't know anything about the company or the job that you're putting in for shows how little you care about it. If you show up with that level of minimal preparation, they will have already written you off. Now, I'm sorry to get all doom and gloom with you, but as you can tell, this is a huge pet peeve of mine. Do a little research and you'll be fine. do a lot of research, and you'll excel. Tip number 2, develop a study guide. Now, while you're researching the company and the job, it's a good idea to develop some practice questions and the answers that they might ask you during the interview. Also, while you're at it, you should practice how to deliver those answers. Now, let's go a little deeper into that. Studies have shown that upwards of 70% of our communication comes from our body language. Let me state that again. Upwards of 70% of your communication doesn't come from your mouth. It comes from your body language. In other words, it's not so much what you say, but how you say it. Giving the correct answer is important. I'm not denying that fact. However, if you can provide an answer with authority in your shoulders and clarity in your tone of voice, you'll come off as confident and trusting. Slouching and mumbling in a quiet tone of voice comes off as meek and that you're unsure of yourself. These aren't necessarily bad traits, but remember, this is all about making a strong first impression, one that will last long after all the others have been interviewed. You want the interviewers to still be buzzing about you while they're struggling to pay attention to everyone else. Your body language can help you there, and all you have to do is practice. Having a solid foundation of questions and how you'll respond prior to the interview will help to ease the stress and boost your confidence. So let's dive into that. How are we going to develop these questions? Well, the most obvious starting point begins with the job description within the original application. Develop questions surrounding the generic job title and the specific ones. Don't skip on the generic ones. These can be used to really help you shine. Here's an example. These days, it seems like every white-collar job application has to have some language like must be proficient with Microsoft Office suite to include Microsoft Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and Outlook. Now, while everyone else is going to respond with, yes, of course, I'm familiar with those and I use them every day, this is your chance to blow everyone else out of the water by saying something like this. Why, yes, sir, I do use those every day. In fact, in my previous job, I put on a weekly lunch and learn within the office where I showed some of our older generation employees some tips and tricks to better assist them in better leveraging the power of Microsoft Office suite. Additionally, I built several products in Excel that I used to cut down time while working on projects. This helped to not only save me time, but also saved our clients money. Now feel free to put your own spin on that or steal that outright. I don't care. I just want you to get the job that you want. And if anyone has recommendations on job interview tips that they've used or observed in the past, please comment below so that we can help each other in the future. Now another place you can find answers are websites like Quizlet. Now you'd be surprised what you can find on there. I'm pretty sure if you looked hard enough, you could find my Quizlet that I made to help me study for the training officer interview and the ones I made to help me study for the general's aide position. So yeah, Quizlet, highly recommended. Finally, I highly recommend developing questions by asking around to anyone who has experience with that exact job, or at a minimum has experience in a related field. Now all of that sounds well and good, but what if you don't have the answer to a really specific question? A question that is critical for you to get right. Those questions that you're just not gonna have the answer to unless you already have prior experience or the insider knowledge necessary in order to answer it. Well, this is where you're gonna have to give out your I don't know responses. There are better ways of saying I don't know, so I suggest you practice and have them ready for when the time inevitably comes when you just can't answer one of those foundational questions, but you need to practice it. Some examples of what I like to use are, let me get back to you, or it's right there on the tip of my tongue, or my personal favorite is, sir, I'm not entirely sure, but I do know where to look, so let me find that answer and get back to you. Now remember what we discussed earlier. The right answers are important. I'm not glossing over that fact, but your body language and how you say it are doing a huge portion of the talking for you. Sit up straight, speak with a little confidence in your voice, and I promise those interviewers sitting across from you are going to take notice. Tip number 3, dress to impress. I get it. This one is so cliche. Oh my gosh, I hate myself right now because it's so cliche, but I had to put it on the list. I had to put it on this list because people get it wrong all the time. Every dang day I see this, they get this wrong. If this is your first time hearing this, then let me have the honor, nay the privilege, to inform you that you should always dress at a minimum one level up for the interview. If the job dress code is business casual, then you should wear a suit. If the dress code is a suit, then wear a tailored suit with a great tie, polished shoes, and throw in a decent watch or cufflinks for good measure. They're gonna notice all these things, and they matter. It's a first impression, remember? Dry clean your suit, iron your shirt, get a haircut, wear cologne, bring a lint roller with you. I have 2 dogs and one of them is a German Shepherd. That dog sheds enough to clothe a small village within a year's time. It's insane. I wait until the very last moment before the interview to lint roll myself down from head to toe. All these things matter when you're trying to make an impression. Now, You may not think they matter because after all, what does your appearance have to do with your ability to perform the job? And you know what? You're kind of right. It doesn't matter, but it can only help your chances for helping you to obtain the job you want. If you would just put a little extra effort into the packaging you are presenting to the interview board, the odds of you getting that job will begin to tip in your favor. And once you get the job, feel free to revert back to your old wardrobe and sense of style. But leading up to the moment of hiring, keep in mind that they don't know who you are yet or what you're capable of. You're going to get more chances later in the interview to impress them. But for now, you should use your appearance as a tool to grab their attention right from the beginning. First impressions matter. Tip number 4, bring a portfolio. Now, I get it. Some jobs actually require you to bring a portfolio. Anything in an artistic field, such as fashion or design, yeah, you're gonna have to bring a portfolio. It's gonna be mandatory. So I guess my recommendation to you is just make sure yours is the best. It has to blow everyone else's out of the water. I wish I had something more clever to give you on that, but I've never done that myself, and I'm not gonna give you advice on something that I haven't tested myself. What I really wanna dive into is the majority of job interviews that don't require you to bring a portfolio. Here are some of the ninja techniques you can use with that. If you find yourself interviewing for a job that doesn't require a portfolio, here's what you could do. Make one, okay? Make one and bring it with you. So why are we making one? Well, we're doing it to make us stand out. You know, put anything in it, anything that you can use to showcase that you're capable of doing the job, even if it doesn't directly relate to that job. I have personally used this method to great effect on at least 2 occasions. The first time I used it, well, it landed me the job, and the second time, well, I didn't get the job, but I got the runner-up position, number 2. That's something, right? Now, my defense, they already had someone picked out for that job, and I knew that going into it. They were not gonna hire me for that job, but I put in for it anyway, and I made a portfolio. Why? Well, because I wanted to get on their radar. It was my chance to sit across from some very highly ranked and very well-connected people within the organization. I could use this interview to make my mark. The portfolio I brought was freshly printed, it was laminated, it was bound together. I showcased my ability to develop easily understood products and how I can plan and think critically. Now, had I not done this, I would have left the interview with nothing to show for it. I went in there with a clean suit and my portfolio, and I made an impression on the interviewers and the general officer that I would have worked for had I gotten the job. In fact, that interview went so well that that general called me afterwards, and he was so impressed that he gave me his personal cell number, which I still have today. I don't say this to brag, I'm telling you this because this method works and I've used it in real world situations. Go that little bit extra and you'll see how far it puts you ahead of everybody else. Tip number 5, craft a compelling story. So the idea behind this step is to sell yourself every chance you get. And the best way to do this is to prepare your answers in such a way that you can craft a compelling story. Now, this one's a little more advanced than everything we've discussed so far because it requires a certain degree of finesse and subtlety to pull off. You want to be assertive and take as much time as you need to answer their questions fully while also expanding further than they expect you to. But don't push it so much that you come off as arrogant and straying too far off topic. While answering the question, take the opportunity to tell a story about something you did to help better the previous companies that you worked for. If your previous employment doesn't directly relate to the job you're currently interviewing for, then that's fine too. Find something you did in the past that makes you the right pick for this job and sell yourself on why your past exploits make you a good fit for the job. You know, when I was interviewing for a position as an engineer and project manager for Shell Oil and Lubricants, god dang, that's a mouthful. Most of my responses were, no sir, I don't have experience in that. Towards the end of the interview, they brought up the fact that I didn't appear to have much experience in the job I was applying for. So naturally, they wanted to know why they should hire me and what made me feel like I was qualified to take on this position without the background experience they were even looking for. I get it. While it was true that I didn't have the experience with this kind of work, I did have experience in building high performance teams and seeing projects through to completion. My experience in the military had taught me the value of proper planning and how to get the most out of people. I also have a video on this. Check out my video on team building if you're interested in that method. I also made it clear that I had never missed a deadline or lost money on a project and could provide tangible balance sheets and references from previous clients to prove it. I made it clear that they weren't hiring me for my experience on the job. What they were hiring me for, what they were missing out on from within their organization, was me. I had to make it clear that they weren't hiring me for my experience on the job. They were hiring me for what they were missing from within their organization. My goal was to plant the seed, to plant the idea in their minds that what they were missing from their organization, what they were lacking, was me. They needed someone like me who could think outside the box and get stuff done. Now, they already had plenty of smart, overly educated people with plenty of experience, and all they had to show for it were disgruntled contractors, loss of money, and several projects that were behind schedule. They didn't need yet another what they didn't need was yet another classically trained fluids engineer. What I had to do was to convince them is that they needed me. They needed Nick Davis. Do your best to craft your story about what makes you unique in each and every response that you give them. Your goal is to plant the seed of intrigue and constantly add water to it throughout the course of the interview. They will grow compelled to make a decision about whether or not they're willing to hire you now or risk losing you to someone else who will then realize the potential that you could bring to their organization. That's what you want to do. You want to make yourself the most interesting person that they've heard from all day. There may be other people they interview that can answer all the questions correctly and to perfection, but if their personality doesn't shine through and leave a lasting impression, that is not the person they're going to hire. They're going to hire the person that they want to work with every day and not necessarily the person who has all the answers. The person they're going to want to hire, well, it's going to be you. Now, as promised, here's that bonus tip. The last 10% of the interview is the dessert that you can feed them to really drive the point home. Now, don't waste it. This is your chance to continue to build on that momentum you've accumulated from the moment that you walk in the door. All of the research you did about the company, your dress to impress appearance, your ability to answer questions correctly with confidence in your demeanor, the portfolio, your ability to craft a compelling story, all of it has built up tension and wound the wire up to the max. All of this has led up to you dropping the finishing blow. Up until now, you've been holding back the best parts of your story. This is the time where you want to express to them exactly what you're about and why they should hire you. This is your time to shine. Now, almost none of this is going to be off the cuff. Take time to prepare your closeout statement and practice it until you can work out most of the jitters in your voice. Now, like most things, this will take practice. So put in the work early and you'll do fine, I promise. At the end of every interview, you'll usually get a chance to tell us why we should hire you. This is where you're going to hit them with your best shot. The closeout statement, the one that you've been practicing. You're going to unleash it upon them and let them know why hiring you would be the best decision they've made all year. You need to leave them with so much to think about that with every interview they hear after yours, all they're going to do is compare them to you. I recommend a closeout statement, something like, I appreciate you all taking time out of your day to let me interview with you. You know, getting this job, working here, would be a great opportunity for both of us. There were some tough questions asked here today, and I know I wasn't able to answer all of them. But I am a quick learner, I'm a self-starter, and I have experiences that I can bring to your organization. I hope you'll consider me for the position and get a chance to look through my portfolio when making your decision and can see what I can bring to the table. Thank you. I can't stress enough that I've used every single one of these techniques in my own life. They are a major contributor in my ability to land the jobs that I have, even with the odds stacked against me. These work. If everything else that you've been trying up until this point hasn't been working, then what do you have to lose? If you use these tips, you will become better prepared and more confident in your interviews. You will easily outmaneuver your competition and leave a lasting impression on the interview panel. Long after the day is concluded and they have forgotten most of the interviewees, your name will rise to the top of the picks. They won't be able to forget about you, mainly because they're walking around with that big portfolio that you made. You did make it, right? You will have planted a seed of curiosity in their brains, and all they're going to be able to think about is how different you were compared to the normal same old routine they've seen from the other interviewees that came before you and after you. This is precisely where you want to be. You want to stand out and leave a lasting impression. As these tips can be truly transformative. It was because of these tips that I landed my current job working for the Army. There were over a dozen highly qualified applicants being interviewed over 2 days. What chance did I have to land that job? And furthermore, when you look at the statistics, I should have interviewed for 3 or more of these jobs before I finally got selected. But that's not what happened. Using these tips, I got hired on my first try. When I applied for my position with Shell, I was unimaginably underqualified compared to their typical applicant. But by using the power of persuasion through making a good impression, I was able to secure the job and add another set of unfair advantages to my toolbox. Proper preparation and practice can truly tip the scales in your favor. And if you've got some more time to kill, check out some of my other videos where I dive into topics such as team building and reinvention of yourself. I appreciate y'all's time. Y'all take it easy.